What is up, Forward fans? Welcome to a very special episode of Fourth and Frames. We're doing this on Thursday evening. And look, we normally have a little bit of small talk. I might introduce Nate and Teddy, which I'll do right now, I guess. Nate and Teddy, how are you guys doing?
Fine, we're fine.
Yeah.
Okay, I don't really care. You guys
Thanks
are
a lot.
Yeah, let's just get to the guest of the show because really excited to have her on. Basically, when you turn on Sports Center, she's every 5 minutes, like I feel like the camera's like panning to her, which is awesome. We're talking, of course, with Brooke Pryor from ESPN, NFL Nation reporter for the Pittsburgh Steelers. Follow her at BE Pryor on Twitter. Brooke, welcome to Fourth and Frames. How are you?
I am great. I am realizing now as I'm looking at everybody's name here, I'm the only one that doesn't have my Twitter handle, so I feel like I missed a memo somewhere, and I'm sorry about that. But if you search my name on Twitter, it'll pop right up.
Way to go, Teddy. Way to go.
Teddy?
That's right.
Yeah,
right.
Tell me.
Way to not tell her. Yeah.
He told me that we were going to be sitting beside each other. He didn't tell me how to introduce myself on the lower part.
I have a memo.
Inside track.
It says, Teddy, tell Brooke to put her Twitter handle below and make sure that you tell her where she's sitting. And you didn't respond.
Yep.
It's in writing, kind of.
Not read, exactly.
Yep, on red. Left me on red.
I regret this already. I fully regret this happening already.
We don't. This is fantastic.
This
is going to be a fun show. Folks, of course, we've been doing our team breakdowns. We're actually 2 articles away from finishing our 64-article coverage of every single NFL team on offense and defense, which you can read over at fantasyandframes.com. And, of course, today we're going to be talking about the AFC North from a fantasy standpoint. What are our thoughts there? Answering some pertinent questions. And who better than Brooke to have on the show to talk about the Pittsburgh Steelers, as well as we're going to get her opinion on basically every other team here in the division. But before we get to that, every time we have a new person on the show, Brooke, we like to introduce, that person to the Forward fans out there and anybody else who's listening who may not know a little bit of your background. So let's just jump right into it. Sports journalism. How long you been doing it? Because you're really good at it.
Thanks. I graduated UNC in 2014. So I keep telling people I just graduated, and we are years past that. Unfortunately, I think the statute of limitations of just graduated ends 2 years after that. But yeah, I've been in sports journalism since then. I'm going into my 3rd season with ESPN, but I've also covered the Kansas City Chiefs for the Kansas City Star and OU, primarily OU football for the Oklahoman. As well as some UNC stuff, some NC Central stuff. But yeah, it's been fun. Teddy has been accommodating enough and apparently loves me enough to let me drag him all over the country.
That's awesome.
It helps when other people are paying for it.
That's true. We have not had to pay to move ourselves. So that is the motivation.
That's pretty sweet. Speaking of Chapel Hill, one of my favorite places to go because I had a friend who went to Duke. I know, boo, all the Carolina fans. Yeah, but
sorry, I have to log off now. That was fun.
Just a friend, just not a close friend, just best man in the room.
Just an acquaintance now. Somebody I know.
Yeah. Nobody. JJ Redick. It's not
a big deal. Yeah, we're not gonna. But we would go to Chapel Hill a lot because at the time there was nothing to do in Durham, and so Top of the Hill Brewery was actually one of our favorite spots to go to. Always had a good time there. Shout out to all the Carolina people there. Let's get into our next question. Obviously, this is a fantasy football podcast. Your husband is a fantasy football writer and analyst. What's your experience with fantasy football?
It is more on the limited side, I would say. I do it for fun. He makes fun of me. He's laughing right now because I did a mock a couple weeks ago where I took Travis Kelce 4th overall. So maybe don't listen to my advice when it comes to where to pick tight ends. I would say that sometimes I am not the best at fantasy because my strategies are usually I get really invested in a person, and so then I'm like, well, I want them to be on my fantasy team because I like them as a human being, which is not how you win fantasy football championships, weirdly enough. But
you should see where she has drafted Gio Bernard. Just the rounds that she has taken.
Gio's a nice person. Leave him out of this table.
I'm just saying.
I don't know. The slander here is really just rude. But yeah, no, it's a character flaw, and I admit that. But I'm getting better. and he is teaching me. And I finished like second in one of my leagues. I'm in 2 all-women leagues. That one I've been in for, gosh, probably like 6 years now. Another one that I'm in with all my best guy friends from college. That's been going on since 2014. It's a Yahoo league. And then I just signed up for another all women's league for women who are in sports. And sometimes I pick up a 4th league. So it's,
wow.
Yeah, it's tough. I'm not going to lie. I get to like week 6 and I forget to set my lineups because Sundays are really crazy. So.
I was about to say your Sundays are a little different than ours, so
Yeah.
I think it's allowed.
Just a bit, by a bit I mean like a lot. All right, let's get down to the real question, though. The question that everybody out there, hopefully not your bosses, are waiting for. When you're not cheering for the Pittsburgh Steelers, which team are you secretly rooting for deep down?
It's really tough because I don't know that I have a team. I have people that I like on teams. So okay. I'm trying to think of I'm like, if we've had really good interviews, I'm a big fan of that person. I'm trying to think of like some good examples right now, and I just keep drawing a blank, which makes it seem like I hate everyone, but that's not the case. I mean, I like watching the Browns play because I covered Baker Mayfield for so long. So
okay.
As someone who covers the Steelers, I probably shouldn't be like, man, I love watching the Browns. But like I do like watching the Browns because I know Baker. Right. I feel that way watching the Chiefs sometimes because there's a lot of great guys in that locker room that I got to know and that were really helpful. I'm excited to watch the Ravens play because Sammy Watkins is one of my favorite guys. Had a lot of good conversations with him over the years. So that's how I pick teams. It's like if I went to college with someone that's on that team, to me, it's really fun to have Eric Ebron here in Pittsburgh because we were both at Carolina at the same time. Ryan Switzer was with the Browns. Now he's out with a foot injury. But that's kind of how I pick and choose who I root for, is just like, do I know this coach? Do I know this player? Do I know, do I follow somebody in their family on social media? Like Megan Sherbert I already followed her on TikTok and I thought she was hilarious. And then when Joe got traded here, I was like, yes, I feel like I know you. We've never talked before. This is really weird. So we're not actually best friends at this point. But yeah, it could happen.
Friendly piece of advice. If you run into her on a plane and you're boarding, don't stop and try to sit down next to her as a la Jorge did. Don't lead by example, Jorge, anymore. With So here's the best part. It was Mike Clay, who was on
your
coworker,
Mike Clay.
Yes, your coworker, Mike Clay, which he even name dropped you so that he had a little bit extra clout. And
I told him to do that. Use me.
Well, what he should have said, and this is the best part. And Jorge, I'm sorry, but I think the killer part about this whole thing is that if I do something embarrassing and I go, that's terribly embarrassing, I hope the recipient of my apology goes, no big deal. They don't say, yeah, that was embarrassing. Because then it's like, ugh.
Which is what Mike Clay's response was to Jorge, with me laughing my ass off behind him.
So the best part of this whole weekend.
So basically, I see him sitting down when we're getting ready to board the plane. I'm like, let me not go talk to him. And if the universe puts me in a position to talk to him, then that's the universe is telling me to go do it. So of course, I'm boarding the plane, and it's a small plane, narrow aisle, and the line had stopped, and right where it stopped was me sitting next to Mike Clay, and I'm like, hey, Mike Clay. And of course, why introduce first name, last name? I could just go, hey, you're Mike, whatever. And so as I'm starting to get ready to introduce myself, the line starts moving and I'm like, hey, the line's moving. Wow, this is really awkward. I was going to introduce myself, but this is not the time. He's like, yeah, this is really probably not the time. It's probably a very awkward time. I'm like, yep, going to go now. Bye. That was my first introduction to Mike Clay. So
I'm sure it was memorable.
Oh, well, so the next day we go see him at the King's Classic, and that's where I run into Teddy at the Hall of Fame. And I go talk to Dave Richard because I got to meet him a few years ago, great guy. And right next to him was Mike Clay. So as soon as I got done talking to Dave Richard, I turned to Mike Clay and I'm like, hey, I'm that guy, the awkward guy from the airplane yesterday. Nice to meet you. He's like, yeah, that was an awkward moment. Like, What were you thinking in terms of trying to introduce yourself? I'm like, all right, Mike, I already apologized. Jorge Edwards, by the way.
And then I get to swoop in with
Yeah, he
my
swoops
wife is
in.
your coworker and covers the Steelers.
Shoot your shot, Jorge. Shoot your shot.
I shot something in the foot. Yeah.
And Dikembe was like, no, no,
no, not today. Not today either.
So for the rest of the weekend, they basically censored me and just kept me away from any and all celebrities, so I didn't make a total fool of myself. So that was fun. But you mentioned Sherbert, and there's a new member to the Pittsburgh Steelers, and Joe Sherbert. So let's dive into some fantasy information right here. Look, last year he was number 4 amongst all defenders. And I'm talking about linebackers, linemen, defensive backs, and total tackles with 141. He stated the start inside with next to Devin Bush. In IDP 1-2-3 fantasy points scoring, he averaged close to 19 points a game. In total points, he was the LB6 in fantasy. Outside of 2018, he's been in the top 10 in terms of points scored. New to the team, just acquired. But people thought that he was going to have an awkward transition going from Cleveland to Jacksonville, and he just kind of picked up where he left off in Cleveland and was dominant there. What are you hearing out of Steelers camp in terms of like the responsibility that he's supposed to be taking on? Is it too soon for that to happen, or is he kind of impressing people?
No, I think he has really impressed people, and I think that they traded for him because that's what they wanted him to do. I mean, he's slated to wear the green dot for defensive communication in games and start alongside Devin Bush, and that was a job that Vince Williams had. Devin Bush briefly had it. Rob Spillane did it. But they weren't totally comfortable with Robert Spillane. I think he was really good last year at times once Devin Bush went down, but still he was not going to be the guy that they wanted to go into the season with. So that's why they make the trade for Joe Sherbert. And I mean, they threw him in right away with the starters on defense and have been getting him as much work as they can to get him as comfortable as they can to be ready for the season to start. And so I don't think that he's going to be a non-factor by any means on defense. And I think that they are hoping that he can catch up really quickly, which he's been able to do from what I've seen. And I think it works to his benefit that he has had so many defensive coordinators in his career that he's used to having to learn new things and having to learn them quickly because he's really using a lot of those skills to come into Pittsburgh. But yeah, I would expect him to have a pretty big impact right away on this defense.
Are you comfortable with him as your LB1?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, the only time he didn't have 130 tackles was that injury shortened, 2 years ago, 2018, 3 years ago, I guess it was. I have no problem with that. I love the move personally. It shows, honestly, I think it's definitely a win now move for Pittsburgh.
Absolutely. Another transaction that was made in, I guess not free agency, but now, Melvin Ingram was signed recently to the team. I'm assuming to bring in for competition with Alex Highsmith, who played really well last year in relief of Bud Dupree's injury. Was this signing? See, I was hearing a lot of things coincidentally from you over the course of the year, or I should say, mini camp and OTAs. Good things from Alex Highsmith. Like nothing bad. Yeah, I think this is his second year now. Then all of a sudden they go get Melvin Ingram. Is this kind of their way of saying, hey, you guys duke it out for the starting spot, or do you think this is Ingram's job, or Ingram is just depth? Like, what are your thoughts there?
I very much thought initially when they traded for Ingram that they were saying, hey, we need another guy to start opposite of TJ Watt. But then I got into training camp and really got to watch what Alex Highsmith was doing. And I don't have any concerns about Alex Highsmith. I think that he's made a really big leap from year 1 to year 2. Just in his offseason training, he's looked really, really dominant in camp. But I think that they're going to have a good rotation of 3 guys, because even though they are poised to pay TJ Watt a lot of money, I still get the sense that he's getting older. He can't play or doesn't need to play as much as he was playing earlier in his career. And so I think that to really maximize him and get the most out of Alex Highsmith, get the most out of Melvin Ingram, you end up with a 3-man rotation. Maybe you even have some snaps where you have all 3 guys on the field. They were doing that at times last year when Bud Dupree was healthy. So I think that this just gives them more flexibility and more of a safety net, because if they didn't bring in Melvin Ingram, then their top backup is Cassius Marsh, who he looked good early in camp, but it's not a guy that you want to be like, hey, you know what? If TJ Watt gets hurt, we should definitely throw this guy in there to start. Like there would be a massive drop off. And so I think that they liked the rhythm and the routine that they had with TJ and Bud last year and having Highsmith as a backup, as a rotational player. And they wanted to kind of replicate that. So with Bud Dupree leaving, they bring in Melvin Ingram, and he kind of helps fill out that group of starters. Obviously, you can only start 2 of them, but I consider kind of all 3 of them, quote unquote, starters in a way.
Sweet. Jumping to the offensive side of the ball, Juju Smith-Schuster. You know, he had a great rookie year, had a great second year opposite Antonio Brown. Then Antonio Brown leaves, and there was the injury-plagued season with Ben. And then Juju, I think, had some concussion issues. You know, jumped to last year. You know, the wide receiver core kind of turned into the Deontay Johnson show for a good chunk of the season, and Juju kind of was not as prominently featured, I guess is the nice way of putting it. And so when free agency started, he signed a 1-year prove-it deal, and I guess fantasy managers have to ask themselves, who is he exactly proving something to? Is he trying to try out for other teams this year? Is there a chance that the Steelers might sign him to a long-term deal? Do you have any insight into that?
You know, the Steelers will have the money after this season to sign him to a long-term deal if they want to. I tend to think, though, that he will fetch a bigger price tag on the open market, especially just because the Steelers are not a team that frequently signs wide receivers to second contracts. And yes, technically this is a second contract for Juju, but it's a year deal. It's not like a second long-term thing that's securing him here for a long time. I think that they just wanted to keep his chemistry and connection with Ben Roethlisberger intact, and that's why you bring him back. And he wasn't fetching the price tag that he thought he was owed on the open market, so it made sense from a business perspective for him to come back. I think that he is a great third down target for Ben. That is Ben's top option if he's open on third down. We saw that in the preseason game against the Lions. He's really good at picking up yards after catch. I think that he has really shown some grittiness to his play that he's always had, but it felt like in the first season when he was playing opposite of Antonio Brown, he was able, or maybe the flashy things that he was doing was kind of how he became so prominent, and you've kind of looked over some of the grittiness that he showed. And I really think that last year he wasn't flashing as much, but I think that he showed more strength in running through tackles and picking up yards after contact. And so I think that he's really carved out a good role here, but I don't think it's necessarily a long-term role. If Ben Roethlisberger, if this is his last year, then I could see Juju saying, you know what, I had a great time in Pittsburgh, but I'm ready to go somewhere else and establish a chemistry with somebody else, another quarterback and another team.
So here's my question, I guess, is I also see it like with the salary cap jump. I mean, nearly 20% going into next year. If they wanted an opportunity to be able to save actually long-term money, I think they would have signed him for a longer extension. I think that would have made sense for them because the cap is going to increase these AAVs for these receivers. And I feel like if they had to take that into account going forward, that it seems like that was kind of writing on the wall where Jorge said, prove it to who. I think this was his agent also saying, maybe we'll just take a 1-year deal without knowing the insights, of course, and saying, I'm going to bet on myself and I'll get that big contract somewhere else with that extra cash flow.
Yeah,
Teddy,
I think that's absolutely it.
Teddy, let me ask you, in terms of where he's going, do you consider him a value at a flex position in your fantasy drafts this year?
A value, yes, just because of the 3 between Deontay Johnson, Claypool, and Juju. He's kind of the third one there. And he is kind of going lower. I think I saw one mock draft. It may have been, or it was either mock draft or ADP. I may be thinking of our mock draft last night with Sleeper. That was kind of skewed a little, but they actually had Claypool and Juju like back to back, which I was very surprised about. With where they were ranked. And in that case, I'd say Claypool would be the value there. It may have actually been on ESPN for a mock draft earlier. But, I think that I think that, as Jake kind of points out, he had almost 100 receptions last year. This is still, even with Najee Harris, going to be a very pass-heavy offense. I think that Big Ben is still going to be throwing the ball probably 550 upwards, maybe 600 times. So I think that there's definitely a path that all three of the receivers here get at least 100 targets. And so, I think that Juju could be a flexible player there. He does have that dreaded week 7 bye, though. So it's going to be kind of tough to watch.
You mentioned Najee Harris, and of course, everybody now has seen the highlight reel last week of him catching that ball and taking it upfield. And I guess in preseason work, that's kind of like the first glimpse we saw of him being utilized a lot in the receiving game. Brooke, going back to you, is this something that is a glimpse of things to come with him? Is he the total package, or is he? Are they not really emphasizing him in the passing game work from what you've been seeing?
Oh no, he will absolutely be emphasized in the passing game. I think that he is a very versatile back. They like him as obviously a true running back, but even more, I think that he was valued so high on their draft board because of how involved he can be in the passing game. I think that they view him as a better pass catcher than some of the other running backs that they've had come through there. I mean, Le'Veon Bell was great in that regard, and I think that they think he can be even better than that. My favorite moment with him was he had a one-handed grab in practice during rookie minicamp, and someone asked him about, like, oh man, you had this one-handed grab, like, did you go back to Alabama to work on that? And he said, man, like, I've been doing that. Like, this, I have always been doing these one-handed catches. So the confidence mixed with Matt Canada's scheme and just Najee's skill set, I think that he is going to be used just very frequently all over the field. He is not a one-dimensional back at all.
Nice. All right, well, let's go over to the quote-unquote land. Sorry, I should never have said that. I'm not hip enough to say that. Yeah, Nate, you're shaking your head.
Yeah.
Yeah, no. Let's go to Cleveland. Yeah, let's go to Cleveland.
We need like a Mike Clay soundbite of, wow, that was awkward.
Can you arrange that, Brooke? Can you talk to Mike Clay about getting that? Wow, that was awkward. Just send me the MP3.
Maybe he has a cameo. We could do a cameo for charity. If he could just say, man, that's awkward.
Yeah.
I would love that.
So I was thinking about, let's talk about some offense, let's talk about some defense. But Teddy, you wrote our 4i team preview about the Cleveland Browns on offense. So why don't you all head over to fantasyandframes.com and check that out and read about who he thinks are the fantasy players that can help win you a fantasy championship on the Browns. Let's go to some defense, though, Nate. Let's just run through this really quickly. John Johnson, really good free safety, strong safety, whatever safety position they put him in.
Absolutely.
Great in Los Angeles, comes to Cleveland. You think he just picks back up from an IDP perspective where he left off in Los Angeles?
Yeah, and I think they're so thin at linebacker that he's going to have to be asked to play in multiple different scenarios, situations, in the box, up tight, quite a bit more than what we saw with LA.
And going to the defensive line, they bring in Javion Clowney, and so when I see this signing, my thought initially goes, oh, this is going to help free up Myles Garrett to be even more dominant than he has been in years past. You don't exactly see it the same way. What are your thoughts on that?
Well, it's not that I don't see it the same way. I think that the idea that he's coming in to be an accent piece as an edge rusher off the other side is probably overblown. I think it's more or less he's coming in as a run stopper, and his ability to kind of pinch the corner and prevent the run. And we know, I mean, the AFC North run heavy. We just talked about Najee Harris. We can go around from pretty much every other team has a formidable run game. And if he can kind of stop the edge or, pinch the edge and allow Myles Garrett, I don't think it's going to focus. Unfortunately, that is kind of the knock. I mean, we all know it's not crazy to think that. Now, week 3 might be
we're going to be optimistic there, Jake.
Or maybe optimistic. I don't know. We'll see.
It's a 17-game season now. It's week 4.
It's week 4, exactly. But I think that any added ability like that on the defensive line is always going to play and pay dividends to Myles Garrett. Myles Garrett doesn't need much help. He's already pretty impressive, and just adding that beast of Clowney. I think we still always go back to college. That's the one play that everybody kind of remembers still. We kind of forget everything else. You're on mute, Teddy. Were you going to add something?
I would say it's on my wall. But
is it really?
I'll move it. Hold on. I got it right here.
For all the podcast
I told him to actually
listeners.
not change his office.
That's
awesome.
That's really
it's signed too.
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
Look at you.
I know.
Authenticated.
See,
Very
and
nice.
that wasn't
Hashtag
even
fan.
planned. I wasn't even playing. That wasn't in the memo. I was not. It was
Clearly,
Brooke-
since I had to
Yeah.
move a whiteboard to get out of the way to get to it.
Exactly.
All I'm saying is he asked, should I move my office around? I said, no, you've got this cool photo of Clowney behind you, but
Exactly.
why listen to me?
Why? Yeah, the person
Who
who just
here
happens to be
listens to
on
their
TV.
wives? Everybody answer. They're not on. They're not on the podcast with you.
No, but you know what?
Yeah,
They
guys.
are watching. So you know
That
what?
is
You
fair.
put that hand up and
Exactly.
you nod your head. Ted, you got any questions for Brooke regarding Cleveland here?
Absolutely. So
You
the
got a
one
lot
thing
of
that
questions for me, I'm sure.
I do, including why did we ever do this?
Oh,
No. So just kidding. No. So one big thing. So you said that I knew you were going to say this because obviously I've been along this journey with you. That one of the players that you do enjoy watching is Baker Mayfield. Now, from a fantasy football perspective, he's actually not that good of a fantasy quarterback. He's fun to watch, and I think he's good for the game of football, obviously with kind of the way he plays. But do you think that there were like a couple games I talked about in the article that he would have like a big game where he'd have like 30 fantasy points, and then he'd come back and he had like 3 weeks after that, he had fewer than 8, right? So he just wasn't very consistent when it came to scoring, passing touchdowns and kind of racking up yards and everything. So do you think that Baker can take that next step this year? With kind of what you see in him as a player that you do like watching, and especially with it being a contract year?
I think, yes, because it's a contract year, unless, I tend to think the Browns will not give him a contract right now, or he won't want one because he's a guy that likes to bet on himself, kind of like Juju here. But he's in a position where if he has a really good year, he can make a lot more money if the Browns approach him with a deal after this season. I also think it depends on the health of OBJ, because Baker has not had a full season with Odell Beckham as a weapon. And I think that because of that, that's probably hurt some of his stats. It's hurt some of his fantasy relevancy. And Cleveland has a great ground game. That is a tongue twister. Do not say that any times fast. I think that because they have Nick Chubb, like they don't need Baker Mayfield to be the guy that's pushing the ball down the field all the time. That has to be a pass first quarterback. And so because of the contract situation, I think that he will make it more of a point to maybe carry some more of the offense on his shoulders, show like, hey, I'm the reason that this works. You need me. You need to pay me, kind of thing. But if that weren't the case this season, then I don't know that I would say that he should be bumped up in any fantasy rankings.
If you were in the shoes of Pittsburgh's defensive coordinator and you had to try to game plan for Cleveland this season, are you going to let Baker, with the moxie and with that, kind of chip on his shoulder, beat you through the air and just try to stop the run game? Or can you stop the run game? I mean, that's the duality of it is, you can't stop both, but what approach would you take?
Gosh, yeah. I'm really glad I'm not the defensive coordinator because that is just an impossible question. I think you have to try to make Baker Mayfield beat you. The priority has to be shutting down the run game, because that duo of Nick Chubb and Kareem Hunt, I mean, that is just impossible. Make Baker Mayfield try to beat you, but that is dangerous. I saw it in college time and time again where defenses tried to make the same bet, and it did not work out well for them, because I think bringing up the moxie that he has is a great point. Like, you give Baker Mayfield momentum and you're screwed. Yeah. So I'm glad that I don't have to make that decision, but I would go all in on slowing the run game and then going after Baker secondary to that.
It's kind of interesting that you mentioned that he has had this kind of running back duo that he has always had that's really strong with him, with Mixon and Samaje Perine, who was very good in college. So that's kind of an interesting point. You may have already answered it with the run game, but if you're kind of paying attention to the Steelers' defense, and obviously they've got to see the Browns at least twice a year. They saw them 3 last time with the playoffs. Who would you say, if you had to pick one player on the Browns' offense, presents the biggest challenge for the Steelers' defense?
I think my answer is Nick Chubb, because I just think that he is going to be a problem. I don't care who's on your defense. Like it's going to be really tough for anybody to stop him. They're paying him like they know he's difficult to stop. So I think Nick Chubb is going to be a big problem for the Steelers defense.
Awesome. It's almost like your husband has him ranked as his number 4 running back in half PPR scoring. So
maybe I read his stories. I don't know. Yeah.
Maybe she went
fantastic answer.
Maybe she went to fantasyandframes.com and read your redraft rankings and checked it out there.
Bam,
throwing it out there. Let's go over to Cincinnati now, and let's talk about some wide receivers. Teddy, which wide receiver from the Bengals would you want to have on your team?
I'm such a Jamar Chase fan. No, it's obviously Tyler Boyd. Everyone knows this. I've been beating the drum all off season with how valuable Tyler Boyd is and how even he's the biggest beneficiary of Burrow when he's healthy and if he's banged up. And so obviously everyone knows I love Tyler Boyd. T. Higgins is going to be fine. Jamar Chase is going to be fine. But Tyler Boyd presents the best value from where you can get him in your drafts.
Yes, switching over to running back now. Nate, we had our mock draft last night doing half PPR and IDP. Third round came along. You didn't hesitate. You picked Joe Mixon. Why'd you take him there?
I hesitated. Quite a bit.
The record would show that he hesitated.
Exactly. But it's not that I hesitated. I wanted to take him. I felt like, you ever get in those situations where you're like, I think I should probably wait so that I don't have everybody saying I love Joe Mixon too much. But, I like one thing. I don't love Joe Mixon. I do love Joe Mixon. I love a player. Eliminate Joe Mixon's name. Take Joe Mixon's name out of the equation. Give me a running back on an offense that could be top 10, that has no immediate threat behind him, that has pass catching ability, and that's going to get goal line work. I don't care if it's Mixon or if it's Brooke or Teddy or Jorge or Mike Clay. Nothing's awkward about drafting Joe
awkward.
Mixon. Exactly. Drop button.
Yeah.
But here's the thing. A lot of us remember 2019 and half season format. Week 1 through week 9, Joe Mixon owners, nothing to do with them. 2020. Weeks 10 through week 17, when he was the RB3 from that point, which I had, fed into my belief that he's going to be a league winner type, especially in the 3rd round, 4th round, like you're seeing him going right now. Problem is he's not always healthy. Last year was a bad situation. He was hurt when healthy. Yep. Exactly.
When healthy is definitely the moniker there.
Yeah, Dr. Doom and Gloom here. Jake is bringing up everybody. If healthy, good Lord.
Week 4 going down.
Yeah. But in reality, that is true. I'm not worried about Samaje Perine. I'm not worried about pretty much any other threat within Cincinnati. And he doesn't have Gio there anymore. So without having Gio there, you open up 3rd downs to even more potential reception upside. And you're okay. Don't worry. No one can see it on a podcast, so it's good, bro.
I was like, you're muted, by the way. And so, good. Look at this. The ESPN reporter struggling with technology. This is awkward.
I was just trying to reposition how I was
She's
by her own coworker, Mike Clay Button. This is awkward.
It's not too many times she gets to be on television or on computers with, stars like you two. It's pretty daunting. That's why I'm rambling through this Joe Mixon 45-minute rant about why he's a decent 3rd round. Yes, he has good RB2 upside.
Big fan.
Nice. All right, let's
we all?
Yes, we are. Let's go to the wide receiver situation, and we'll kind of tie that into the defense here for Cincinnati. Look, Jamar Chase, T. Higgins, Tyler Boyd. Obviously, Joe Burrow has a lot of receiving options on this team. Now, the Bengals on the defensive side of the ball, specifically in the cornerback situation. Let's go to Pittsburgh's cornerbacks. They lose Mike Hilton, coincidentally, to Cincinnati. Is it like a next man up mentality in that defensive backfield for Pittsburgh? Are they have any concerns about keeping up with the offensive passing weapons within the division, specifically with the Bengals, or is it, like I said, next man up mentality for Pittsburgh?
I mean, I think Pittsburgh will have the next man up mentality, but they have been auditioning guys to fill that nickel role that Mike Hilton left. It will be interesting tomorrow it will be Trey Norwood getting a lot of snaps at nickel. Not something he's really done through camp. Antoine Brooks was one of their 2020 picks who was the front runner coming in to have that spot, and they just waived him with an injury designation 2 days ago, which is really surprising. He missed a lot of time in training camp with a lower body injury, could never get healthy, and they said, all right, bye. We've tried, and you're just not available. And then after that, they were auditioning Arthur Millette, who another guy, I think he's played pretty well, but then he injured his ankle against the Lions. So now they are kicking Cam Sutton inside to kind of see. Cam Sutton has always been the safe option there. And I don't mean safe as in like, he's just passable. Like, Cam Sutton's a really good slot corner. At the same time, Cam Sutton is also a really good outside corner, and he can't be in both places at once. Although they're kind of asking him to do that right now. Like, there's a possibility that they go out and he starts as at outside corner, they go into a sub package, he moves over to nickel, and then they bring in James Pierre to fill that other outside corner role, just depending on how they're shifting things around. But the secondary is just super interesting because it is still not settled at this point in camp. I think that they would like to have somebody to back up Sutton at inside at that slot corner spot. At this point, I think it's going to be Arthur Millette, unless Trey Norwood just absolutely blows the doors off of it tomorrow night. But I think that they're pretty set with Joe Hayden on the other side. Obviously, Minka Fitzpatrick, set it and forget it. Starter here, Tyrell Edmonds, another one of those situations. They didn't pick up his fifth-year option, so he's in a contract year, and he knows that he has a lot to play for. Trey Norwood is the backup safety for one of those spots, and then Miles Killebrew has been filling in for Tyrell Edmonds whenever Edmonds hasn't been able to go because of an off-season surgery he had. So they have enough guys in the secondary. It's just right now figuring out where the puzzle pieces fit in best that they are still trying to navigate. And time's running out. It's the 26th. The regular season is coming very, very quickly.
Right. Let's go for the Bengals defense, Nate, real quick. Von Bell was DB 14 in total points scored. Jesse Bates was DB 4. Can you really go wrong with either guy?
No. I mean, you can't. I know it's dynamite analysis, but
That's
both are elite.
Let's go to now one of our guys that we were pretty high on last year, coming over in free agency from the Saints. Trey Hendrickson tied last year with the most sacks with 13.5. Was he a product of circumstance last year, or do you think him being opposite of Sam Hubbard is going to kind of help to continue on what he had with Cameron Jordan last year?
And it's an interesting way of phrasing that, because I would say that it's not that Marcus Davenport and Cameron Jordan both elevated his game exponentially, but I think that maybe that's the case. You can always allude to that whole chicken and egg conversation. If me and Teddy are both booking defensive ends, and he has a win rate of around 20%, and mine's 14%, but he has 2 sacks and I have 10. Who was the more effective pass rusher? Well, the numbers will say that it was me. In this situation, though, Trey Hendrickson actually was top 10 in win rate. He was, top 10 in pass rush win rate. So overall, he actually was getting to the quarterback. He was getting the sacks. And in Cincinnati, I think the same thing can be had. It's the intriguing part's going to be just how many situations that they are leading. If the offense plays like they should, there's a good positive game script for them that they should be able to pin his ears back and focus exclusively on the quarterback. Problem is the quarterbacks to get to are a little bit challenging. Lamar Jackson's not easy to take down. Baker Mayfield does have ability. Ben Roethlisberger. Moving on. We can go.
Look, he can shed off guys. He's still got it. Come on.
He shed weight. He did. Shave.
He does look good.
The clock against the Lions. Look, he played well against the Lions. Yeah, it's a preseason game. Yeah, it's the Lions. But
I was about to say, yes, it's the Lions.
Hey, all I was doing is comparing his agility to Lamar Jackson and Baker Mayfield. I wasn't saying that he's a statue. I wasn't
unlike somebody,
that.
unlike somebody down there or across there. Is there anybody else in this defense? Anybody in the linebacking core that we should potentially?
I mean, God, their linebacking group is just usually garbage. Logan Wilson is a solid upside play. If you look at everything, he's wearing the green dot. His coverage skills coming out of Wyoming were elite, and so now maybe he gets to play into that a little bit more. I think that looking deep, if you want to take a stab at someone who has that LB2 upside being drafted quite a bit further down, I like Logan Wilson in that scenario.
All right, let's head over to Charm City to round us off in this podcast. Brooke, look, to say that there are concerns with the Pittsburgh offensive line is an understatement, given the fact of the losses along the offensive line, one of which was the right tackle, Andrew Villanueva, who goes to Baltimore, no less. Was this a cap move, or do the Steelers really feel comfortable with who they have there now? And it was one of those things where it's like, thank you, Andrew, for your time. We got some depth pieces, and that's how that is.
Yeah, I think it was a combination of things. Al Villanueva was going to command a high price tag to stay in Pittsburgh. He was one of the more underpaid players, I feel like, here, and he was kind of due some kind of upgrade to his contract. But the Steelers also had to figure out a way to keep Ben Roethlisberger but reduce his cap hit. They need to extend TJ Watt. They had to sign a rookie class. They needed to make some moves in free agency. And so I think that, unfortunately, Al was just kind of a luxury that they could give up because they felt good about the guys they had in behind him. They now have moved Chuks Okorafor from right tackle to left tackle to take Al Villanueva's spot, put Zach Banner at right tackle, a spot that he won in camp last year and then tore his ACL in week 1 against the Giants, and then Chuks had to take over for him. But the reviews out of camp and watching Okorafor, his natural position is left tackle. So even if he struggled at times last year at right tackle, the staff feels like moving him over to the left side will be a better fit for him. He's younger than Villanueva. I think that this line as a whole needed some kind of overhaul because they were one of the worst groups in the league last year. I mean, the ground game just being non-existent is pretty good evidence of that. And yes, we have said that they were playing the Lions in the preseason game. Should we really read into that a lot? Probably not, but they did a pretty good job protecting Ben. And that is the most important thing. But yeah, that's definitely a weak spot on the team. But I think they felt like, Villanueva played great while he was here. He was a good left tackle for a long time. But last year it felt like his level of play dropped off a little bit, and he wasn't going to be worth the cap the cap space that they were going to have to dedicate to keeping him around.
We got a question here. Let's go for Teddy. Feelings on Najee overall in rookie dynasty drafts.
Yeah.
Feel great.
You need a quarterback. It's a 2-quarterback league, and you only have one. Like you.
Wow. Good Lord.
Yes,
Yeah.
I will work out a trade, but you need a quarterback.
Does he? I don't know. Maybe not.
I mean, to be fair, his one quarterback is Patrick Mahomes, so maybe he can just roll the one.
That's 2.
But he's supposed to roster 2. I know Jorge is going to say, well, don't even do that. But he's supposed to roster 2 and play 2. So, yeah, get a quarterback. Najee definitely won't be there by the time you come back around because you're picking 5th. But we'll trade. It'll be fine.
Look at you giving advice to your league mates. That's fantastic.
I say take Najee.
Well, there we go.
Yeah, I think you should take Najee.
Yeah, Teddy's against you. Why would you listen to him?
Yeah.
I would take Najee, but that's because I draft players that I like talking to. So
fair enough.
Don't do what I say or do.
No, but I took Najee in my first round of my home league, and I'm like not regretting it one bit. So I'm happy to hear all these great words for him. But another running back that kind of jumped out at me when I'm looking at my ADP at the various platforms, whether it's ESPN or CBS, NFL, Sleeper, you name it. Mm-hmm. I'm looking at top 15 pick here, and J.K. Dobbins just keeps popping up every time I look at it. I'm looking at his projected points, as I'm sure many a fantasy manager, they're getting back into prepping for their league's drafts, and they're trying to do their homework, and they're scrolling through their app, and it's like, top 15 overall, J.K. Dobbins. Nate, what are your thoughts with this here? Are we fully on board with J.K. Dobbins, or
I'm not fully on board, especially, if it was maybe in a standard league, he moves up a little bit higher for me. But Teddy, what do you think here? If I'm worried that he doesn't have the reception upside, they signed Gus Edwards, who historically has been more than serviceable. Paid him heavily, and they have to worry about Lamar Jackson rushing. What upside am I missing from Dobbins?
So you're not. And so I think that everyone, his ranking, and this is as someone that took Dobbins way too early in a draft before looking into it, but Dobbins is a good player. They are run first, obviously, with Lamar and everything, but Dobbins technically is the second best rusher on this team.
Mm-hmm.
So you obviously have to deal with that. But Lamar just does not pass the ball much, but he doesn't pass it to his running backs. Combined, Dobbins and Gus Edwards had 27 receptions last year.
Mm-hmm.
Let's just take away 80 from, I don't know, J.D. McKissick, and that's how you win. That's how few they had.
You had to work him into the show, didn't you?
Yeah,
46. You had to work him into the show, didn't you?
You knew it was going to happen. It's our last divisional breakdown. He's here, J.D. McKissick for the win. But no, for real though, like J.K. Dobbins last season played in 15 games and only had 23 targets. Like, it's just, even if game script is saying you need to like pass the ball, Lamar's gonna still be innovative on the ground. I don't think that in half point or full point PPR leagues they should be treated like receiving backs, because they're just not. They're just agile.
Fair enough. Let's go to the defensive side of the ball. Cornerback and IDP, normally not, a sought after position when you're trying to fill in your defensive back spot. But again, we're talking about IDP 1, 2, 3 scoring. Shout out to Jordan Raines from the IDP Army, 50 Shades Drunk on Twitter. With this scoring setting, which is the default scoring setting for the sleeper app, it gives cornerbacks a little bit more value, a little bit more points assigned for passes defense, for interceptions. Nate, why should people be high on Marlon Humphrey, and maybe they shouldn't? What are your thoughts there?
I mean, again, like you said, scoring format has everything to do with it. I don't know if I'm as high on where right now his current ADP is the defensive back number 9, going according to Sleeper. And at defensive back 9, I'm out on that. I would much rather have a safety with that elevated tackle floor. The one reason that I give a defensive back 2, upside to him is the fact that he has Marcus Peters on the other side of the ball. Marcus Peters is going to focus some attention Marlon Humphrey's way. Last year was elevated. The guy, he had 8 forced fumbles. 8 forced fumbles is not a sticky statistic that you're ever going to go year over year. It's just not going to happen. But if you look at the tackle upside that he does possess, because they're going to, again, positive game scripts, they're going to throw. They're not going to want to attack Marcus Peters, and they're going to avoid the middle as far as the linebackers in Baltimore go. Patrick Queen, who Teddy took last night, is an elevated coverage linebacker. He might not have showed it last year, but he will be. I think he'll be even better this year. He's an excellent piece. But Marlon Humphrey, sorry to circle the plane, not land it exactly, but I have a hard time ever penciling in corners in that, regardless of the scoring format. So, I mean, I still am as a defensive back too. I think he's a great player, but I like Chuck Clark at his ADP better, I think.
I'm going to ask, is it Marlon or is it Marlon? Because I've heard both.
Oh, I don't know.
Yeah.
Marlon Humphrey, because we had this last year when he was dealing with COVID. Someone said Marlon, and I just don't know.
Just Humphrey is the Humphrey, yeah.
Humphrey.
That's a good rule.
M. Humphrey, there you go.
M.
M. Humphrey.
M. Humphrey.
I'm
Humphrey in Baltimore.
And I just can't. If I could just exchange everybody's names and say Wink Martindale for everything, just because I think he has the single best name in all of football as far as coaching goes. If you guys, Wink Martindale, if that's not the perfect, it's more of a game show host, but I think that's what I like.
It sounds like he hosts like the Newlywed Game.
It's all I think of the entire time, and it's M. Humphrey,
an old school host. Yeah.
Oh yeah, he's kissing all the women on the mouth, before you would get
100%.
Exactly.
So Brooke, back when Mike Tomlin took the job as a Pittsburgh head coach, there's this documentary about how when Bill Cowher took over, Chuck Noll left in the refrigerator in his office a beer, and then Cowher did the same thing to a Tomlin. What are the chances we can get you to sneak into Tomlin's offense and replace the beer with a Truly?
God, that would be incredible, wouldn't it?
Yes,
that
we would take Vizzy as well.
Truly, you got a Vizzy. You know what? If ESPN ever says, "Hey, we're not renewing your contract," then I will try that move. But probably not before that.
That's probably a wise decision. So that covers all of us, all of our stuff for the AFC North in our podcast. If you want to know more information about other players, head over to fantasyandframes.com and read all the work that Teddy and Nate have been putting into with our AFC North articles, as well as at the end of the weekend, check out all of our team previews, look at all of our sleeper profiles, check out our rankings, and of course on social media, we're all available to answer all of your fantasy football questions to get you ready for your fantasy football drafts. And before you know it, folks, week 1 is going to be around the corner, and we can't wait. Brooke, thank you so much for joining us on Fourth and Frames. We got to have you on more often. More Brooke, less Teddy. No, I'm just kidding, Teddy. I'm sorry. We still love you, Teddy.
I'm fine with that. It's 9 p.m. and I've got to cook dinner now. So more Brooke, less Teddy is perfect for me.
Again,
I was really gonna cook dinner beforehand. So let's be honest. We're gonna have popcorn for dinner. It's gonna be great.
That's true.
I love popcorn. It's fantastic. NFL Nation reporter for the Steelers. Find her at BE Pryor on Twitter. Thanks again. I love your work. Loved your work for years, and we got to have you on soon.
Absolutely. I cannot wait to come back if Teddy will allow me.
No. Even if he's not, it's okay.
I'll be out of town and she'll be podcasting with you guys.
It's fine. It's
Probably.
totally acceptable. Teddy, Nate, as always, it was great. Thank you, everybody, for listening. We will check back with you next week. We're doing another mock draft next week. Hopefully that one goes a little bit more smoothly, although the mock draft last night was a lot of fun.
Thank you for 10 of us, or 11 of us. You read the rules.
Yeah, so I didn't listen to the rules and I didn't take a quarterback. Whatever, it doesn't matter. Go check out that episode over on YouTube, everybody. I'm Jorge Edwards. We'll catch you next week.